Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sledgehammers in the Office podcast, where we celebrate the heavy hitters on the job site and in the office. Mason was unable to be with us tonight, so made a couple phone calls, and we have Mr. Forrest Stuart with us tonight. So, sir, welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. Glad I could be here.
All right, so we're going to start just like usual in regards to, we're just going to kind of shoot the shit for a bit. We'll jump into some stuff at the end, or probably around the 30-minute mark. We're going to talk about some building stuff, some car stuff. Forrest has been on one of our call shows previously talking about vehicles and working on vehicles with, what was it? We talked about the electric cars, cars getting more complicated, stuff like that. So you guys can reference that in a previous episode. But we're going to be talking about cars and then building stuff, and we'll go from there. So blue collar conversation. But we're gonna do our obligatory hangout session first. So what have you been up to the last couple of weeks?
Let's see. The most recent thing is I had Mom provide somebody with my contact information to do a brake repair on their vehicle. 2016 Honda Civic. Super easy, light work. Took an hour, maybe not including diagnosis and running to get parts, but did that, made a couple dollars. I know this guy here, he's been really bugging me about trying to make money while I do it, and I like to do it because I'm helping people out, but if you can make money, I guess, then you can make money.
Well, the problem is, and like we've talked about, Forrest will get approached by people to work on their car, and he'll just be like, okay, yeah, you just pay for the parts and we'll call it good. And it's like, whoa. That's not how this should work, because people are going to quickly start taking advantage of you. Or even on the flip side, someone's going to find out how much you charged for the job that you did and go, there's no way that guy did a good job, because there's no way he could make you money, so there's got to be something wrong here. And so it's like, we talked about it yesterday, but you don't have to charge out your rear end in terms of like, oh, I'm charging $100 an hour, $200 an hour. But it's like, you got to charge something, because one, your time is worth something, first of all. And then second of all, like, it's also communicating that to the customer, not just that, hey, my time is free, so bring your car over whenever you want, and I'll take care of whatever little things you've got, because you know that you're essentially getting it either at cost or for free.
Right. I guess by the way I'm talking, I'm pretty green at the whole business thing, so I've yet to experience the getting taken advantage of and whatnot. But it's always good to hear from some sound judgment from somebody close to you, which Thaddeus is one of those people for me. So
yeah. Which, before we start talking about that too much, you want to hear a funny story?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I went to Michigan recently with the wife, and there's some funny stuff that needs to be left in personal conversation. But here's one that, so when I went there, I recorded a podcast with Gordon Henderson, and that is my dad's cousin. He's the CEO of a company that my uncle and him own together. So when we're going out there, the wife told me, hey, we're allowed to have a backpack to take on the plane. And the way she communicated to me, between the two of us, we were allowed one carry-on. So we got to get all our clothes in there. I had told her that I wanted to do this podcast. I've been waiting 3 years to do it, but he lives in Michigan, so it wasn't going to be like, it's like, when am I actually going to be able to do this? And here comes the opportunity, right?
Opportunities.
So I've got all the podcast equipment here, and like, usually it'll be like, all right, each person has their headphones. I'll have the splitter for that, all the different things that go into it. So I'm now having to figure out, how do I get all of this stuff into a backpack? And then I need to also make sure my clothes can fit into my half of this carry-on. So I was able to kind of be like, all right, we're eliminating these clothes, get it all done. And then I was able to get all the electronics taken care of and put in the backpack. So like, but I'm nervous going up to TSA because I've got a backpack full of wires and this thing that looks like a canister and all this stuff. So I'm all nervous. They're going to pull me out of line and be like, are you building a pipe bomb here? What's going on?
What are you doing? Hey,
No.
I swear.
Yeah. So the one thing I forgot to bring was the extension cord and the multi-plug that I have. And I thought about it and I just needed to save space, and I was like, well, there must be a Walmart there, so if I need to, I can go grab it or whatever. We go to the airport, everything was fine with getting it through, but they did tell us like, hey, and they're calling out, if you've got PS5 or Xboxes, they need to be put in a bin. Like, all electronics need to be flat and in a bin separate from each other. So you can't stack anything on top of each other. So I've got like I think I had 3 bins in a row just that I'm feeding through it just because I've got so much crap with me.
Oh my goodness.
And then while we're there, I ended up borrowing a surge protector and an extension cord from her grandfather's place because I ended up not going to the store, but he had it there, and they said, yeah, go ahead and take it. So did the podcast. Podcast was great. We're leaving, or I put all my stuff away. What was it? The next morning we're leaving. So I didn't change anything with my backpack or anything like that. So we're going to the airport in Michigan. I opened up the airport because I thought it was going to be just like Phoenix, where each thing needs to be individual. And they're like, no, not at Michigan for some reason. I don't understand it. But anyways, the first thing I see when I open it up, the extension cord and the surge protector. And I'm like, huh?
Oh no.
We're at the end of the security line.
Yeah, there ain't no way you're going to be able to take that out of there.
Nope. Her grandfather's house is an hour away. So there's no turning around at that point. So I was just like, all right, I'm going to mail him a new extension cord or just order something off of Amazon. So it was just I was like, oh my gosh.
Have it shipped to him.
Yeah.
So I thought carry-ons were the ones, I guess you didn't have to get bag checked like that. But I guess if it's going under the airplane. There's checked baggage
that goes, you put a tag on it and you hand it into the people, right?
And that one goes underneath the plane.
Right, yeah. So it's like, do you have just a bag of clothes that you want to take with you and maybe some small toiletries so that's what we had with us. You had that and then a backpack. What we found out was each of us had a carry-on and a backpack. So at a certain point, I looked at the wife and I'm like, really?
Really? Really? You do this to me?
So it ended up working out because on the way there, that we were each allowed to have one. On the way back, though, you had to pay per bag. So that's where we were like, all right, we're going to condense it all down again. And
so it worked out.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time the last airplane trip I did was to Miami. No. Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Miami, Florida. Beginning of this year. Boy, was that a interesting time. All for a tattoo on my arm. I don't know how much time we got, but I can probably spend a good amount of time talking about it. But
tell the Cliff Notes version.
So go to Miami. Everything was a mess. I show up 20 minutes before the tattoo artist and the other tattoo guy wanted to get started on tattooing on that guy. They didn't have enough time at the venue to even start tattooing, so
this is all at an anime tattoo convention.
Anime tattoo convention. It was more of a tattoo convention with an anime theme, but when I heard it, I was like, oh, all right, this is gonna be cool. There's gonna be a ton of cosplayers and tattooing and people just going around and whatnot. But it was mostly just a tattoo convention with an anime theme to it. But so they ran out of time on the first night, which the tattoo artist was there way early, like Wednesday, and I got there Friday night, but didn't have time to get started tattooing at the tattoo convention. Run back to the Airbnb all night. The guy's getting tattooed nonstop, and the next day was my turn to get tattooed. So it's like, oh my goodness, what's happening? This guy's gonna be drained and not have any energy to tattoo me. It takes us forever just to get ready to get to the convention. We could have had 10, 11 hours or something, but we only did like 8.5, and it was like, oh my goodness, there's so much that we could have got accomplished, but it turned into a nightmare, and I almost missed my flight on the way back because I didn't hear my alarm go off, and I heard my phone ringing, and I was like, what? And I'm trying to look at my phone. It was a mess. It was definitely something that's going to be in my memory banks for a long time, and a good enough story to tell people for a while. But it was an experience I don't think I want to experience again, but it was definitely an experience to have, for sure.
Nice. Oh, I was going to tell you. What was I going to tell you about? Oh, I didn't announce it on. I posted a little teaser on Facebook and Instagram, but not a lot of people listen to the podcast. So for the people who do, here's a little special something for you. I took my trade-specific test for a KB2, which is going to be a general contractor's license for residential as well as small commercial, and that's going to include up to projects up to $2 million. I've been sweating bullets on this whole thing for a while. So did I tell you I started a course for this, and they said they show you how to answer the questions, here's where to reference it in the book. So you get three code books, which
so it's like kind of like test prep, like get you ready. Like,
yeah. So for those who are watching, these are the 3 books. You've got the International Code, International Residential Code, Building Code, and then OSHA regulations on top.
And for those who are listening, these books are about a foot thick each.
Not quite, but pretty dang close to it. So the test prep program, they said they teach you as far as like, hey, here's where you're going to want, they'll ask you a question, they'll show you the references, and then you get 300 questions like that. Then you move on to the actual practice test, which is going to be the question, and you have no references. You just have to find it in the book, right? So I do the practice test the first time. I scored in the 80s. They recommend if you score in the 90s, then you can go take your test in. They're pretty confident that you're going to pass it. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I also rushed through it. Wasn't really doing the math questions because I wanted to see like where's the breakdown of what are the things I actually have to work on. Like math is math, so as long as I understand how to do it, then it should be all right. I got an 86, so I was like, oh, okay, we're going to do this again, but this time I'm going to be more deliberate with trying to answer all the questions. Got a 92, so I'm like, boom, let's go. So I was a little nervous, was kind of didn't really have a date set. Talked to Paul French a little bit about the test and studying, and he kind of gave me a kick in the ass to get things scheduled and get things moving. So schedule the test. When you schedule the test, they give you an option to get one of their practice tests, which is completely different than the one I went through. I'm like, yeah, this can't hurt. Sure, I'll sign up for it. So a week before last week, I end up doing their practice test. I got a 42 on that test. So now I am sweating bullets just as far as there were questions on there that with a term that I didn't even know till the week before that had to do with accounting. And I actually learned it from French. It has to do with accrual accounting.
Accrual.
Like ACCRUAL, I believe.
Sounds like it's on top of itself.
The way that I understand it is that all the money that comes in is tied to an invoice or a work order that's going to be happening, so that it's supposed to be a way to show the money that's in the account for tax purposes, that this is not just money that I have sitting here. This is money that is actually a placeholder and is attached to this. If someone's ordering a bunch of windows and doors, it's that, okay, I've got $10,000, but it's not just that, oh, I have $10,000, so we get to tax you on that. It's like, no, this is attached to this
inventory.
Right, exactly. So, but I didn't know what that term was until essentially the week before, and I'm getting asked questions about it. So I'm just going into this test with the idea of are they going to ask me things that are off the wall? What's going on?
business questions,
Yeah,
accounting questions.
The last week, I spent the entire time just like going, not even doing test prep questions anymore. I would start like reading through the code books. I would I started choosing chapters and I would start reading through them like, okay, this seems important. Try like different color highlighters, all that stuff. So I go into the test nervous as all get out.
Shaking.
Yeah. The test is scheduled. You're allowed to have 4 hours. I didn't know how many questions I was going to have. I thought it might be like 100 to 150. Apparently it's 110. And all the questions seemed to be stuff that I had seen before. So I was like, oh, thank God. And so got an 85 and passed the test, and I was so happy at the end of it. But
how long
after
did
that
it
42,
take you?
I got done in 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah, just about.
Time to spare. Gonna go back and look at questions you might have second guessed or.
So I had marked questions for review, and there was one question that I think like something very similar popped up like 3 times, and from what I'm told, usually that means that you might have gotten it wrong the first time. So they're trying to figure out like they want you to know it, so they start throwing more questions like that out there.
Gotcha.
So I marked all of them for review, but I finished all the questions. I felt pretty good about the test, and I was going to go back through the ones I'd marked for review, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, I don't even want to mess with it. So I just clicked end that test.
Confidence. Boom.
I don't know if it was confidence, but it was just like, we're going to see what happens.
Let's go.
So yeah, now I get to put together the application for the license, pay money for the bond, insurance, all that good stuff.
Can you explain what the bond is? Because I know I've heard of it, but I don't know what exactly it means.
I don't understand it all the way, which I probably should. But as far as the way I understand it, so you've got the ROC, which is the Register of Contractors in the state of Arizona. So you have to purchase a bond, which goes into a fund of money that, let's say you're a homeowner and I come over, I work on your house as a licensed contractor, and I don't build things correctly. I'm not building things to code. So like you're looking at me going, hey, this is not right. This isn't like, this is for my house. Like I'm supposed to be living here, and maybe like framing's completely wrong. So you can get in contact with the ROC and file a complaint against my business, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll come out and look at it. So if I did do something wrong, they'll be able to say, hey, yep, he clearly messed up. So there is a fund that they're able to pull from to essentially help make things right in terms of getting things fixed appropriately.
But then you got to put money back into the bond.
Yeah.
Because they take it out of your, I guess it's kind of like an insurance policy then for the homeowner that you work on.
Yeah, it's essentially, if I understand correctly, almost an insurance policy almost through the state for contractors specifically. So there's a maximum that can get taken from, a maximum amount that can be paid from essentially this bond fund to homeowners per incident, stuff like that. But the other thing with the ROC is I have heard stories of homeowners who will start saying, who will bring a complaint to the ROC that is illegitimate. So you've seen, I think you were on one of the job sites with us where there was a customer that blue taped the hell out of everything.
I remember that. People, those are the most annoying people to deal with. I think it was one of the reasons why I didn't want to work in the trades. I was like, good grief, this is what you got to deal with. And you got to take it too, because they got a lot of money and they want it done like perfectly perfect, not like okay perfect, but like to the T perfect.
Right. So in that case, that's luxury, right? So as the contractors that are working in that scenario, you will usually try and provide that service because you need them to be able to tell all their friends, hey, they went above and beyond. My house is absolutely pristine. It's perfect. All those things. But and I don't want to downplay it. Like when the situation we're talking about, this person had taken a ladder and gotten like 12 inches from their.
They took a 16 microscope. They got on their hands and knees and looked under things.
Yeah, they were up against the ceiling that's like 16 feet tall to go point out things that are probably an eighth of an inch thick that you cannot see. If it's like, oh, it needs a dab more paint here, and so if you have a house though that someone says, hey, I'm not like, let's say going back to this, we have a situation, there's a homeowner and with the contractor, and the contractor says, hey, we've done everything according to what we're supposed to, like, we've done a great job, we've gone back, we've done touch-ups, you're complaining about things that are way over the top as far as we need to grab a microscope to get these things taken care of. That, let's say that homeowner files a complaint with the ROC. The ROC is able to come out and basically arbitrate and say, hey, this person did their job according to, basically it's like according to the common practices and standards in the trades. So there's nothing wrong with what they did. Like,
right.
That's
not
why
out of bounds.
Right. So if someone's framing walls with 2x4s that are shaped like bananas, they're going to be like, you guys are retarded and obviously you're in trouble. But if they come out and it's like, no, you did a beautiful job, the kitchen or the house or whatever it is, like, is pristine, then they get to tell the homeowner, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, hey, they've actually done a good job. You're incorrect in this situation. You need to pay this contractor. So it's an entity by the state. Typically, they're going to be dealing with crazy situations where you might have, like, I've heard crazy stories about some of the builders working on these 7-figure houses that are not licensed, or they get a multi-million-dollar deposit because some of them are scumbags and they'll ask for all the money up front, and then they just leave to a different country.
Don't even work.
Nope, grab their girlfriend and go because they've got a couple $1 million. They'll escape to Mexico or somewhere and just be like, that's it.
Yikes.
Yeah, so it's nuts, but yeah. So that's the purpose of the RSC.
Explained very well. Thank you.
I don't know if very well is a good way to put it, but.
Well, it made me understand, so.
Oh, and then the week that, so last week, the test was coming up, and then a friend of mine that I go to the gym with, we started doing his kitchen remodel. So it was just two things happening at the same time. They were kind of stressful because I had to get it ready for the Granite guys to come in and template. So we had to get all the cabinets ripped out, wall torn out, which we've got actually videos that we're prepping for YouTube. So we'll have that published when everything's done. But get the cabinets put back in so they could come in and template by the end of the week, because we're trying to make it where as little time as possible that they don't have to have countertops. So
right.
We can't Friday night before the test, I was over at their house, and we left around 8:30 that night because we went to dinner with my grandparents, and then after that I went over to my friend's house. I hooked up their sink, their disposal, got the dishwasher hooked up, and then we even set some plywood on their cabinets so they have like a countertop, like a pseudo countertop now.
Something to work with for the time being.
Because it's going to be like 2 weeks before they get the countertops in. So
they got to custom make them and whatnot. Are they like marble or what?
They're quartz.
Quartz.
Yeah, so just like those right there.
Right.
Yeah.
But they got all their measurements, take it to their shop, lay it out, cut it up.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to do it. So these guys do what's called the old school way, which real quick, do we need a little more shamrock milk?
Don't mind if I do.
Chocolate milk, the whole milk, because that's always the best.
It's got the most flavor.
Yep. So there's two ways to template countertops. There's the old school way and the new school way. New school way is with a laser, which I'll get to that story in a second. But old school way is you buy these probably eighth of an inch thick pieces of wood that are probably like 3.5 inches wide. And as far as I understand, they're like perfectly straight. So you buy them in bundles, and they're built for templating things. So what they'll do is you have all your cabinets done. So imagine right now my kitchen is in the background of where we're recording for all the audio people. Anyways, imagine taking all the countertops off of it. They'll go through, especially on the 90-degree areas in a kitchen, and lay it out so that they know the exact dimensions that it needs to be. The reason why is because the framers are supposed to keep the walls as square as possible, but usually there's some kind of variation.
Right.
So what all of that wood does that they're putting down is it allows for, okay, is it a little greater than 90 degrees? Is it a little less than 90 degrees? How do we need to adjust this? Because, or even what's the distance on that back length versus the front length, stuff like that. So they can staple all these wood pieces together, take it to their shop, lay it out on the stone, and then cut it appropriately.
Mm-hmm. That's the old school way.
That's the old school way. So that's what they're doing. And so I asked my granite guys in regards to like, hey, I've heard about laser measuring, because there's some people who are very keen on like lasers. You can get down to the like 64th of an inch or
nanometers.
Right, yeah. So the story he told me about that was they had been approached by a sales rep for that, and the gentleman said like was trying to do a demonstration. So they said, hey, like, how about we try this out on a job? There's two ways to laser measure. One is you're going to buy the laser measuring kit. You're also going to buy the saw that works off of the laser measuring. So here's what we'd do. We'd take our laser measuring kit, go into the kitchen, shoot the different points that we need to around there, take the memory card out of basically the laser system, right? Go plug it into the saw, and the saw, like, once it gets orientated on the stone and then cuts everything. So you don't have, like, it knows where everything is based on the grid and all that stuff. So it makes it super precise, super easy, all that good stuff. So there's a hybrid way in between, which is laser measuring and then the old school cutting. So what it's supposed to do is make it where you don't have to do as many adjustment cuts out in the field, because sometimes what they'll do is they might cut some of these quartz, granite, whatever the stone is, a little bit big.
So like, if they do need to make adjustments,
they've got the ability to in the
right.
field. And these guys have crazy precision even with these field cuts that I've seen some of the stuff they're doing, and I'm just like absolutely blown away. So it's crazy stuff that they're doing, but what they're being pitched with is, hey, you're going to spend less time cutting with the laser saw, because that will be able to, your guys don't have to cut the sinks out by hand, so that's going to save you time first of all there. Second, it's also going to make it where you have to do less cuts in the field once you take all your material back out there, because everything should be so precise. You're not going to have to, we got to edge this out because this is wrong. From what I was told, they had tried the hybrid way of laser measuring, cutting it the old school way, and then bringing it out there. The dude told me all the pieces needed to be adjusted in the field. So instead of it being like, we got like
it's perfect,
3/4 of these pieces are completely perfect, we need to just adjust 1/4 of them. This was, he said, we had to adjust every single piece of stone that went out to that job. So
no thanks.
Yeah, that's where it's the hard part as far as the laser measuring and the saw, to be able to buy it. Guess how much it is?
$10,000.
Try adding a zero.
$100,000.
$250,000.
Holy jeez! Are you kidding me?
No. So it's supposed to pay off in terms of the accuracy and time.
Which, by the hybrid way of doing things, or the old school way of doing things, it doesn't seem like it's very accurate.
The old school way is pretty darn good when you've got people who pay attention to detail. The hybrid way was the one that was the issue.
Oh, because then you have the human error.
They had the laser measurements, which it seems that there was either some kind of issue with the measurements that they were taking with their laser, because that's once again the issue, right?
Right. You
can set up a laser and be like, oh yeah, this is going to be perfect. But if you're using it wrong,
yeah, and then now you got issues.
Right. So this is, they've got the rep out there who's with them, who's supposed to say like, hey, here's how you do this correctly, and it didn't work. So it's like, all right, I don't know whose user error this is, but we brought the person out here who's supposed to know the most about it, and it's still not working.
It sounds like a $250,000 mistake.
They didn't buy the saw.
They didn't buy the saw?
No.
So $150,000 mistake.
Well, I don't think the dude was.
It's a lot of money.
They didn't have to. I don't think they lost a lot of money on it. But they just spent the time having to adjust everything in the field because they didn't. The guy was out there demonstrating with them the laser and then said, "Hey, go take the measurements, see how it works," because he knows if it works well, they might buy it. So it was more like a here. I'm pretty sure it was more like a free thing. They didn't have to go spend tens of thousands of dollars.
Lucked out, I guess.
Yeah.
Just imagine though if you do buy that and then you start doing it the hybrid way, and then you get all these issues. There's this tool that my work uses to like take like 3D scans of a variety of different things, but like because I work in the automotive department for this company, we mostly deal with vehicle related things. So you got like these little dots with a black outer ring and a white center circle, and you like attach them or like you stick them onto whatever it is that you're trying to scan. And the idea is that you just gotta, pull the trigger, and then like all these lights are flashing, and then you just gotta kind of like swoop back and forth around whatever it is that you're trying to scan. So then, once it's doing its thing, you look at the computer monitor, and then it'll appear.
It creates
as
like a
you're
3D rendering.
Right. So
okay, yeah, I've seen this.
There's issues sometimes, which I'm assuming the people that like what they're doing at my work versus if it was something in like the construction field where, all right, you can actually visually see what you're doing. And sometimes what'll happen is if something is just weird with how the computer program is like reading or like picking up the image, whatever it is that you're trying to get, sometimes it'll overlap itself, and then you can get like, like say you get a ball, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to scan the ball, but then for some reason when you're like, going on the opposite side of the ball and you're trying to scan it, for some reason the computer trips out, and now you got like, you're looking at your render on the computer screen, and it shows that there's like 3 balls instead of just the one that you're trying to scan. So because I actually saw it happen when we were trying to scan a wheel and tire. It just overlapped, and it was offset a little bit. So when you looked at it, you're like, all right, that's not like an accurate representation, because a lot of these things, they have to get represented in court, so they need to be as accurate as possible and whatnot. So when you have like these little mess ups, it's like, okay, it's no big deal. You got to delete the file, which is like a big hassle, and you just got to do the whole thing over. But like, say you're doing your countertops, right? You don't get like that visual of like, you may or may not, I don't know, but like if it's reading, but then there's like an overlap or an overlay where it's like the shadow, like you're working, and then the lighting is just a little different, and it makes the laser scanner thing can't get like, an exact measurement of it. So then it thinks that it's this way, but it's actually that way. And then when you put it into the computer program, cutter saw thing or whatever, and it's like you get this weird cut, you're like, why in the world is it like that?
Yeah.
So I mean, I like old school way of doing things myself. Sometimes it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should,
which
kind of thing.
I like the new school way, but I think it almost needs more time for proof of concept as far as running a tape measure for me, or even doing, if they're laying it out with the wood pieces that they can cut them and snap them exactly where they need it. We know that that's guaranteed because people have been doing it like that for decades now. So it's almost like if we have 30 years of people laser measuring, and then someone comes up to you and it's like, let me sell you these boards to template granite, we're going to be like, get out of here, because we know the reliability of the laser. But since the laser is the new kid on the block, and it's like, hey, we need to actually know, is this correct? Because I've got a project I'm managing a project right now that has tens of thousands of dollars worth of stone going into a bathroom. They're doing the shower walls, they're doing the countertops, toe kick for the the cabinets. They're doing
Yikes.
these columns on the back where the mirror's going to be. So it's like it's tens of thousands of dollars. So it needs to be right.
Right.
So if the laser is going to be correct all around, then wonderful. Absolutely. Let's move to the laser. If that's going to be better, save people time, save people money, or even just make the countertop guys more money, I'm all for it. But if not, at the end of the day, that means we're losing time, we're losing money. So that's where then it goes like, all right, we're doing the old school way.
All right, so think with me for a second. So say you got one situation, you're doing the same exact, say countertop,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll have one guy physically do it the old school way, and then you'll have one guy do it the new school way. In terms of like hours getting it done, what's the contrast? What's the comparison? What do you have? Like, so the old school, you got your tape measures and you got your stapler and you got your little pieces of wood that you gotta,
Mm-hmm.
all right, you gotta lay it out, staple it all together. And like, it's like, it seems like all you're paying for the guy for his time doing it and then the material. But like with the new technology, you're looking to be able to pay it off in a reasonable amount of time, right?
So it's supposed to be the accuracy of your measurement. I think it's supposed to make it quicker. And then the real payoff is with the saw. So you're supposed to be able to lay a slab down, punch in the card, and then the saw is going to do all the work instead of having several guys working on this slab to get it cut correctly.
So trying to get it more cost effective.
Right.
As well.
So it'd be cost effective, quicker. You need less people to get the job done. So in the end, like, it's kind of the unfortunate part, but if you did go to the laser saw, maybe you don't need 2 guys in that capacity anymore, depending on obviously how big your crew is. So, but it's like, okay, if you're paying those guys 40 to 50 grand a year or 60 or like whatever they're paying, like let's just say 50 because it's easy numbers. If you don't have to pay the 2 guys in a company to cut the stone because now the machine's doing it for you, that's 100 grand in 1 year, 200 grand in 2 years. You've saved 50 grand by the 3rd year.
Right.
And then it just goes on from there. Because if this saw is supposed to last for a long time, like what is it that essentially 2.5 years you're breaking even. So if you can use it for 5 years, you've saved another 250 grand.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not that it's a complete solve everything, but it's supposed to be more accurate, less people, less time. And so,
is it like an actual bandsaw, or is it more of like a water jet where it's just like piercing the whatever slab you got going?
I don't think it's a bandsaw. It's have you ever seen a tile saw? It's got like a diamond blade on it.
So you got like sometimes you can get them things real big, right?
I think that it's like that. I haven't seen it, but I'm pretty sure it's like that.
I'm really curious what this thing looks like because you got to go. You have it on one plane, but then it's actually got to turn 90 degrees. And if you got like your 2 axis, like your X and Y axis grid, and you got to slide it around, you can get one direction.
Well, you've seen like CNC machines, right?
Right. So, but I mean, like with those, like with the X and Y and Z planes, usually what they deal with is like a bit. Right, and so when I hear a blade, you gotta physically be able to either maneuver the blade somehow, or in this dealio itself, it's actually got to be able to rotate.
I think it's that. So it's like a CNC machine, and it can drop down, and I'm sure it can rotate. Does that make sense?
Oh, so it looks like it pivots off of this red thing here. Okay.
So it looks like a frame. If anyone knows what a
frame.
CNC machine is, you've got your 2 walls and a track that this saw is on, and it can drop down, and then it can probably rotate to be able to make all the cuts it needs. So that's why, like Forrest is saying, you've got your XYZ axis that it can go off of. Oh yeah, because here's one. That one's like you got the computer on there and everything. So that looks
$250,000.
Yeah, which
it's an investment.
Yeah, and so that's where it's going to be for companies that are doing that. It's if you're a hobbyist doing that, God bless your other line of work that is making that much money.
Right.
So,
Sheesh.
yeah. So, all right. Before we get too far, I want to hit some of the numbers that we usually track in regards to construction, along with some of the housing that has been on the market or closed recently. So, active homes in the greater Phoenix area, 8,763. That's up 507 from last month. Closed, 4,272. That's down 145. Interest rate is in the sevens right now. 2x4s are 365. That's up 35 cents. Plywood, 2350. That's the same. We've seen a lot of that bounce around, but that one's stabilized, even though it's expensive. Half-inch copper pipe, 2781. That's roughly the same. So, thoughts as usual. The active numbers are holding steady. Closed numbers, stuff's still moving. I was talking to an investor friend today, and he said a lot of the stuff they're looking for is off-market. But they're looking for severely distressed properties. So that's where a lot of the investors are looking right now. If I'm taking his example and applying it to a lot of others and going from there. So people are still buying and selling houses. That's why Mason's not here tonight, because he is writing an offer for a client of his. So hopefully that goes well. But let's move into a little bit of talking about working on cars, the process, a little bit about, we talked about the brakes and stuff right now, but I think one of the things in the trades that we're experiencing more and more, and I'll even be honest, is the hesitancy to work on things. So when I had an issue with my truck, I have no idea where to start. You knew exactly how to pull it apart, put it back together, and I'm going through a similar experience with this kitchen that I'm pulling apart. I've got electrical that I'm dealing with. I've got plumbing that I'm dealing with. And so for a lot of people, they hear electrical, I'm going to shock myself to death with plumbing. I'm going to flood my house and lose everything that I have. And if it's anything structural, then my whole house is going to fall over and kill me, my dog, and anyone else who's visiting that day. So when we come to cars, everyone seems to have the same hesitancy as far as, I don't know what to do. If I do the wrong thing, I'm just going to break it, or I'm going to get hurt myself. In regards to when people are looking at their car, which maybe we'll break this into two segments, I guess. But there's maintenance that needs to be done on a car, and then huge overhauls, or hey, your car's totaled.
Yeah.
So you've been in a family that has always worked on cars. How do you view the work, in some ways almost like the mechanic work, when people don't know what to do? I'll kind of leave it open-ended and let you take it from there.
Thinking about the question, so growing up, my dad he still loves motorcycles, but growing up he raced motorcycles, and he didn't really do anything with cars so much. He had a lifted Jeep with some 33 tires on, but ever since I was a kid, he was doing something in the garage, and it was fun looking, and I wanted to do it, I guess. But there's a certain smell that you get with automotive, I don't want to say kind of like sawdust, but when somebody's working on a car, you can kind of get that smell. But I don't know where I'm going with that really, but I try to understand the question. Working on cars is like a love-hate relationship. This is the automobile is such a fascinating, interesting machine, but sometimes the engineers who engineer the darn things are dumber than a bag of rocks, it seems, because you're how in the world is this supposed to be fixable without tearing everything apart? And sometimes you just got, the engineers have their way of trying to figure things out. They've got standards, they've got things they got to deal with. So when it comes down to the technician, they're just it's if I see that whoever engineered this thing, I want to beat them with a wrench kind of thing. It's what were you thinking? There's I forget what Ford engine it is, but the starter is right underneath the intake manifold. So you got to do a lot of work, a lot of hours just to be like, say your car's just like tick, 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 and the starter's not going. You got, a couple hours of work ahead of you. And if you don't want to do it yourself, you got to pay a shop to do it. And it's going to cost you a good amount of money.
Okay, so maybe then if we were to look at, I'd say working on cars, being in a mechanic's role, it just fits right in as far as it is one of the trades. But I think we've talked about previously as far as cars get more and more complex, it becomes more and more of a skill. It's not just I grab wrench, I go turn bolt, and now you're a car fix. It's a puzzle that you need to understand how it comes apart. You've got how many different manufacturers, how many different models that you have to know. So let's differentiate as far as what would you say someone should take. Let's talk basic services versus, hey, you need to take this to someone who actually knows what we're doing.
So when you say basic services, you're looking at, I need a new tire, my brakes are worn out, my struts are, blown, I need new shocks, I'm leaking coolant, or, I got an oil leak somewhere. Those I would, like you can take to any run-of-the-mill auto shop. You can't take them to discount aside of tires and wheels, because that's all they do. But if you take it to, let's say, like a Big O or Firestone, or I'm not sure what other big shops are. There's a Wilhelm's over here in Phoenix.
But any of the generic larger...
Yeah, so like stuff like that where it's like something that you can probably get done within like a day or two. Those are kind of like your more simple car repairs. But then you'll get some stuff that's a little bit more complicated where like with a lot of the German cars, just the way that they're engineered, you actually need like a specialist, like an engine specialist, if there's like something going on with their engine or transmission, because 9 times out of 10 they're gonna have to tear it apart just to get it fixed. They have all the tools. They have like the specific know-how and training for how to fix, say a Mercedes or a BMW or an Audi. It's like with a timing chain or a timing belt, you would assume, at least as an auto mechanic, you would assume it's on the front portion of the engine, but for like an Audi, it's on the back. So now you got to take the engine out of the vehicle completely and fix the timing chain. But a timing chain, you're looking at something that shouldn't go wrong in the life of the vehicle that you have it for. But unfortunately, people who abuse the vehicle or take very poor care of it, like lack of oil changes, that will that kind of stuff will bring on like, yeah, you're going to need some big repairs later on. So like proper maintenance is good. And the one, like I don't know if this is on topic still, but like with the new oils and stuff that they're bringing out, like you don't need to change your oil for 10,000 miles. People like thinking, yeah, that's great. And it's like, it's probably good that, that we can get oil to, extend to that long of a life. But, in like a maintenance standpoint, if there was something else going wrong, that's kind of like underlying, you kind of ignore it up until that 10,000 mile mark, right? So instead of changing your oil every 3,000 or 5,000 miles, in that time frame, however long, like 2 or 3 months it takes to get you to 3,000 to 5,000 miles, if there is an issue, you can be like, oh, look, there's an issue. Let me get on top of that before it gets worse. But
question to that, though, as far as there's certain, like, these quick stop oil change places, and I'm assuming that for a lot of those guys, it's going to be your dropping the nut out of the oil pan, getting that oil out, oil filter, switching that out as quickly as you can.
Yep.
So even if someone is changing their oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, then they're most likely not going to catch that, I'm assuming.
Right, because their job is to do the oil change, get it in and out as quickly as possible, and they might not even have the tools or the personnel to be able to take the car off to the side and work on it, because their job is to be able to do quick and dirty oil change. Because for a lot of people, their lives are so busy that it's like, hey, I got 10 minutes. Can you just get this oil change done? They're like, yep, we'll get it done. Bada bing, bada boom. Now you're on your way.
How would you recommend people, then it's like, hey, you're busy. You went on your lunch break to get it taken care of, or you're on your way home. You got your oil changed. You went to like pick up the kids or do whatever. And so you just got to be on your way. As far as should it be that someone takes the time to at some point go to somewhere besides one of those quick stop places to make sure that, hey, I need someone just to take a look around to make sure everything looks good? Would that be like almost, would we say like a once a year physical like we have, or like
you could say that
have, or
yeah, that would, I guess depending on your lifestyle, like how busy you want to make things, it's definitely good.
Super busy.
It would definitely be smart to be able to get ahead of the curve of like a potential issue, right? You've got serpentine belts or like drive belts, right, that'll run the accessories of your car, like if you got power steering pump, it'll run that, your air conditioning, which is like really big here in Arizona. So like
for some people
you can just roll your window down. I wish I could roll my window down, but I need to fix that. And that's the other thing too, is like as a mechanic you understand like, all right, I can get by without having to do this particular repair, even though it's something that needs to be fixed. It's like it's like it's a window, it's like it doesn't need to roll down. I don't go through drive-throughs, so it's not a necessity for me.
Yep.
But like I wanted my AC working, so I had to go and fix that. But like going back to what we were talking about, like once a year, it's like that's probably good. Maybe 2 times a year would be probably better, because like with like the drive belts, I'm saying is like they'll get worn out. The heat that kind of just wears them out a little bit quicker. And
so would you, I guess maybe to just say, would you recommend that people, if possible, try and avoid some of those quick stop stations, take it to someone who's a little bit more, they do more than just oil changes, because they might be able to see something and say, hey, just want to let you know this exists, and you might need to get it in?
So I mean that's like a kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like, yeah, you want to go to a shop that'll tell you, it's like, hey, these are some things that we see are kind of concern with your vehicle right now that you might want to look into repairing. And it's just like it depends on like who you're talking to, right? You'll be talking to somebody, it's like, oh, don't try to upsell me, they'll get really pissed off at you for talking to you about fixing their car. And it like goes back to like the physical. It's like it's like you trust your doctor to when you go for your checkup to be like tell you what's going on, you want to get that fixed. And like it's just in the automotive field, but it's just a little bit different. It's like people look at their vehicles like as just as a tool to get them from point A to point B. So it's like for them, like all this extra maintenance on it is not necessary. But when it comes down to it, if like the repair guy says, hey, you need to get your brakes done, you're like, don't try to upsell me. And they're like, well, okay, I tried telling you. And like that's really all they can do. They can't really hold their vehicle. I guess maybe in some states it might differ because they got like more heavily safety regulations and
just
whatnot.
like most business though too, it's about creating that relationship with the customer, because no matter what, you're going to have on each side of the spectrum, you're going to have someone who's completely naive and will believe anything you say. On the other side of the spectrum, you're going to have people who will tell you a liar no matter how honest you are with them, because they don't want to, They think, I don't need to spend the money on being upcharged. But then it's also, there's the people in the middle where it's like, hey, if I'm honest with these people, they're going to listen to me when I say, hey, here's what's going on with your vehicle. And I can point to, take a look at this, take a look at this. If you want to take a look in terms of do a little quick online research, verify what I'm saying is true, absolutely. But just creating that relationship to where you want it to be that, oh, I stopped by, hey, Forrest, here's the keys, let me know what's going on. I come back, hey, Thaddeus, unfortunately we found X, Y, and Z, and we're going to need to get it fixed. All right, what's the damage going to be? And as far as money goes, and we just have that conversation from there. But as always, it starts with that pocketbook or the trust before we start breaking open a pocketbook.
Right. There's another thing too that'll happen. That is, when I worked in the automotive field, I guess I technically still do, but not in like that commercial sense. But people will come in for, kind of like those once a year checkups, right? And like they might be able to tell something's going on with their vehicle. So they'll want like, that checkup on their vehicle. And then, all right, yeah, we'll do it. And then, all right, these are all the things we found. We can fix this, and this. And then we write it up on our worksheet that we got, our invoice, whatever you want to call it. And then we put it back up for the front salesman to go, hey, communicate it with the customer saying, hey, we need to do these things. These things are, these things are like your biggest concerns. These ones are getting there. You don't have to worry about them so much right now. But what happens is like we'll have these instances and people will be like, cool, grab their cars and leave. And they'll have their neighbor or something do it. And I mean, there's nothing really wrong with that, except like it kind of hurts the technician, because for the most part, they don't get paid by the hour if they're like, a higher level technician where they're doing more diagnostic work. So they get paid by what they call a flat rate or a flag rate, which you deal in like tenths of an hour, right? So to do the inspection is probably like 0.4 of an hour, so a little less than half an hour. You're doing this full inspection on this vehicle, and then you have like a ticket that's like, all right, this is going to pay me a good amount of money, and then they just up and leave. So it kind of hurt. Like, I don't know, it's like if sometimes people's monies are hurting or whatever, but it kind of hurts the technicians too. It's like, all right, this is something that I could pay my own bills for if I can get this job done, and just get paid good money. But then you get these people out just leave, so you're doing a little less a half hour of an inspection, and then you have the vehicle sit in there because you can't get a hold of the person, and then you got to do another car, and that it's kind of just like it builds up to where it's like you're not making money. So it's just kind of like circumstantial, which is in part to why I left, because it was inconsistent, mostly because of my opinion of the whole COVID thing. People are afraid to go out. They don't want to, have to spend money on their car. Usually if it was like back in the day, it was like if it's like a big enough repair, they would just sell their car and then buy a new one. But now, like with the whole COVID thing, it's like people have to like start repairing their cars. But like, with like the lockdowns and whatnot, people can't go to work, can't pay nothing. So it's like the car is just one of those things that just get added onto that bill of, I got to spend my money to fix this to, live. And so people will avoid that, and then just kind of got in a sticky situation with all that. And I don't know if things are looking up right now, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah. It always depends on the financial ability of the people coming in, which I also think, going back to as well, talked about for a lot of those places being readily available, it's you start to attract, like what kind of a customer are you starting to attract, right? As far as when you think of like a fast food chain, if it's a McDonald's, Wendy's, whatever, it's compare it to like a nice steakhouse. You're getting two different types of people walking in there. So same thing if it's the Firestone, Wilhelm's, name whatever place you want to, as far as they have their place, and obviously there is like, okay, we have technicians here that we want to make sure that we take care of, but at the same time compare that to the shop where they've built everything off of a word of mouth, off of a reputation that says, hey, when you come here, we're going to be honest with you. So this is not the shop where you show up, get the diagnostic, and then run to your neighbor or run to YouTube or whatever it is to try and figure it out. There's more of that relationship, and it's sad that does still hurt the technicians at the bigger chains, but it's kind of you choose the field of battle that you're gonna.
Right. It's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yep.
Location. You can be like on 19th
that
Avenue.
And reputation.
Right. Like if you go to like your 19th Ave and Dunlap, you're like, oh, it's kind of a sketchy area. You're not going to attract too much customers over there, but
we work on McLarens here.
Yeah, you go to somewhere in Scottsdale and Frank Lloyd Wright, and you probably get like a better customer base or customers who are willing to spend money on their vehicle, but then you also get, because they have so much money, they're a little bit more stingent with it too. So it's like,
well, it also depends on it's just luxury, right? Because you've got some customer, and this is just everyone with money, as far as there's some people who are going to be a little more open-handed, some people who are going to be a little more closed-handed. So the nice part about when you're dealing with wealthy people is that they usually have more discretionary income, but they're also looking for something in return, right?
Right.
So like we saw that at the window and door company when we're interacting with people that have high net worths, or that there's a certain professionalism. We didn't show up with tore up jeans. There's one day where I had an install guy who got moved over to the service department for the day, and he's got sealant that from weeks prior that he's got just stained all over his jeans. There's holes in his jeans, stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, we can't be doing that, because when you're doing a build from the ground up, that's fine, you can get away with it. But when you're standing in front of these people, it's that next level that they're also paying for. So they've got more of that discretionary income, but we also need to be doing those things in response for that. So it's that give and the take, right? As far as if you're going to play at, like, for us, 19th Avenue and Dunlap, you don't have a lot of money necessarily in that area. It's like, what's going to be your bread and butter? Your bread and butter is going to be volume. So you need stuff to be in and out. So
right.
You're not going to be going through, hey, you know what? I'm going to detail this car. I'm going to make sure everything's super clean. I'm going to make sure whatever it is. But compared to if you go out to Scottsdale, you dang well better put a seat cover on there. You better make sure that it smells good in that car and doesn't smell like a sweaty dude's been working on it all day. Like, they want to be able to get in there with the assurance that, one, it works, but two, then also that
you didn't leave
you need to give them a little fluff.
Yeah.
So, and going back to it's like
that'll work as like your customer relations too. It's like, hey, they took care of my vehicle not only in this aspect, but the aspect of making sure they didn't trash it on the inside,
right?
Even though the work was on the outside.
Yep. It's the complete package, especially when you're selling to the luxury market.
Yeah.
Cool.
All
right, we've crossed the hour mark, so we'll probably wrap it up there. Thanks for being on the podcast, especially last minute.
Thanks for having me.
All right. You have any social media that you want to plug?
Not really. I'm trying to stay away from social media right now. I was telling Thaddeus like last week, because phones are giving you these weekly updates or weekly status reports on like how much hours you're spending on what app, and I spent an ungodly amount of time on one particular one. I did better this last week. I checked the status report. It was yesterday, and I dropped it by a considerable amount, almost half, not quite half. But I was like, all right, we're in the single digits now. It was terrible, but it was good to see that it's like, all right, I'm making progress, and it's like I'm fine. And now instead of just using that dead time as dorking around on the interwebs, I can be more productive around the house or wherever else with working out or fixing my own car or working on my project car instead of just sitting out in the backyard. It is hot, so that's like one reason not to work on it, because I don't want to come home from work and be an extra sweaty mess and get angry and have to go to bed angry. So, but for social media, I got nothing to plug. If you want to get in touch with me, it's probably text message or probably through Thaddeus would be the best if you want to get a question over to me or whatever.
All right, if you've got anything for Forrest, feel free to comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram at Saito_building. On X, it is at Sledge in Office. And I think that's it. So until next time, I hope your hammer stays accurate, your Wi-Fi fast, and your work blessed. See you, everybody.